jump in and talk to you a little bit about kind of my system, for lack of a better word, when I'm painting. I'm going to talk a little bit about this piece here. Just because this is one I know it was in one of my shorts about... this is a little pewter mini that I got way back in the day when I was playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons with some of my high school or junior high school friends. This piece I've had for a long time. It was originally a sort of a fighter, and I hadn't ever painted him until just before I started to do this channel and stuff. This is one that I showed before, so you can see it's a pewter mini here. And one of the things about this guy, like I said, he was a fighter. Originally, he had, you can see his left hand here, but over here his right hand is missing. Originally he was holding like a long sword, but I don't know if anyone's ever played a game that has like pewter minis in it, little metal figurines. The pewter is a really kind of soft metal, and it bends a little bit, and then if it bends too far it will snap, and at some point his hand snapped off. So when I was painting him, you know, what I do when I'm painting is I try and think of like a story for him, just because I just try and think of a story for whatever it is I'm painting, and then paint according to that story. So this mini, I thought, okay, he was a fighter, but I can't really paint him as a fighter anymore since his hand has been broken off. So when I painted him, I thought, okay, he's got training like he's a fighter, maybe he wears leather armor, some sort of armor like that, but can't use his sword hand anymore, so maybe he's a monk. So instead of doing like silver and painting him like he's got chainmail on, maybe give him leather armor and make him some sort of monk guy. He's got a short sword here that he can wield in that hand, I guess. I even tried, but I don't know that you can really see it. I put a little dab of red in there to show where his hand was cut off. But that's kind of what I do when I'm painting. And so today we're going to paint this figure here. Sort of a halfling character. Looks like she might be a paladin. Wearing heavy armor, wielding a great sword that is, you know, larger than she is, definitely. And so I thought I'd paint this. And as it's a halfling, I was going to go for, you know, some light, summery, outdoorsy sort of color themes, yellows, greens, natural colors. She does have a little bit of an angry face on her there. I don't know how well that comes out. I know there's white in the background here, so it's got a little bit of white on white. So it might be kind of hard to see. But she looks like she's, you know, carrying a lot of punch. Packs a lot of punch in this little person. For her story, she actually reminds me a lot of a character from one of the older Baldur's Gate games. I know Baldur's Gate 3 came out this past year or so, and I've played that. I really liked it, but she reminds me of a character from, I believe it was Baldur's Gate 2. Baldur's Gate 2, I haven't played that in years and years, but the character in Baldur's Gate 2, I looked her up, was a character named Maisie, and she was a halfling. Now, the thing about, while I'm talking, I'm going to go ahead and start painting this, or at least getting out some of the colors I have that I'm thinking of. Maisie was a really interesting character in Baldur's Gate 2, because she, in Baldur's Gate 2, 1 and 2 use 2nd edition, or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rules, and there is something really interesting about the rules of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Classes were way more highly restricted by race. So you had your base classes, fighter, thief is what they called the rogue back then, wizard. Lots of those were, sort of fairly normal. Anyone could be them. But some of the more specialized characters or classes, not any race was allowed to be them. For example, paladins you could only be a paladin if you were human. You could only be a sorcerer if you were a human. So they were very restricted there that way. Let's see here what I want to start. I usually like to start deep down in, so probably like the chest armor, which I'm thinking she's going to be wearing like a green nature. She's going to be like a nature type paladin. So green under there. I'm really expecting my hand isn't as steady as some, so I'm thinking I'm going to get it onto other things. But I'm going to start down in here. But anyways, going back to 2nd edition. In 2nd edition, the classes were often restricted, not only by prerequisites like a paladin, you'd have to have a high strength and charisma in order to play that. You also had to be a human. So as a human, or as a you had these sort of restrictions. So now I'm going to try and talk and paint at the same time. So we're going to see how that goes for this. But Maisie in Baldur's Gate 2 was this character who was a fighter. Officially, she was a fighter. She had all the abilities and proficiencies and things of a fighter. However, one thing that was really interesting about her is that her character's story is that she wanted to be a paladin of the goddess of halflings. The way this story played that out, rather than just using the rules and saying, hey, rules is written in 2nd edition or Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, paladins have to be human. The way Baldur's Gate 2, the game, played that out is that the group, or guild, I guess, maybe, or the order of paladins in the area and everywhere would not train non-humans to be paladins. So there was an NPC paladin who, I do not remember his name at all, sort of your standard lawful good. At the time, your paladins were also required to be lawful good. But the standard, he was just your standard holy warrior. But she, Maisie, and that paladin did not get along at all. She actually multiple times in their dialogues, if they were both in your group at the same time, they would argue. And she kind of, when you went to do quests for the Paladin Order or talked with any of them, she would interesting things like that. She just was not a fan of those. But for flavor, she did get 1 or 2 Paladin abilities. She could do lay on hands. I think that might be the only one. She had lay on hands as an ability that she could do in addition to her regular fighter abilities, because she was officially a fighter. So that's just something that I always found really interesting about Baldur's Gate 2 and those Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rules. And as a kid, I was very rules are rules, very rule-oriented kind of kid. And so I always thought it was weird at the time. I thought it was weird. Well, the rules say that only a human can be a paladin. Sorry, Maisie. Not a big deal. Moving on to later editions of Dungeons and Dragons, made sense to me. You know, eventually, as I got older, I was probably like 10 or younger, when I was playing Baldur's Gate 2 on my computer. I was just like, sorry, Maisie, those are the rules. As I got older, 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons came out. Made sense to me that, you'd get paladins of other races, other species, as the name is now for the different types of creatures you can be. can have a paladin, a bugbear paladin. One thing that kind of gets me a little bit now is, sorry, trying to concentrate while I'm getting into these nooks and crannies in here for Maisie here. One thing that I don't want to say it bothers me, that one thing that just kind of stands out to me is the way in which now we talk about paladins of non-good deities, or I guess in the most recent versions of Dungeons and Dragons, paladins aren't even necessarily associated with gods. They get their abilities from their oath, which, I don't know. For me, that's totally fine. Flavor-wise, for me, paladins have always been holy or divine warriors, whereas clerics are more of your, not divine warriors, but they're clergy. Paladins are not clergy. Clerics are. I really like what Pathfinder did, 2nd edition Pathfinder did, for how to distinguish some of this in their classes. They, at least, I haven't looked at Pathfinder in a while, but in Pathfinder, rather than Dungeons and Dragons, they renamed the Paladin. So it's no longer Paladin, it's Champion. They are the warriors of a religious order. Rather than clerics or the clergy, you have these paladin or champions. And what they did is changed the name of the champion based on its alignment, based on the deity that it's associated with. So if you had a lawful good champion, you would end up with a paladin. So I'm trying to get it to dry a little bit so I can kind of go out a little bit to the next layer that I'm going to be painting. So Pathfinder, you'd have these lawful good champions, which would be paladins. You have your chaotic good ones. I believe those ones were called the Liberators, because their order and their abilities were keyed to freedom, and so you had abilities that, like, if someone was restrained or something, they would gain special abilities. I only looked at Pathfinder a little bit with my son when 2nd edition first came out. But your lawful, your chaotic good was a liberator, your lawful good was a paladin, your neutral good was, he was themed around, that type of champion was themed around redemption. I think it was a redeemer is what they called it. But then their oaths would be that way, would focus on those. So the lawful good one, their oath was around chivalry and things, and then the liberator's oath was around what would be considered an oath in Dungeons and Dragons in 5th edition and 1D&D, would be around liberating slaves, things like that. So just those kinds of touches and nuance. They didn't really have evil champions in the player's handbook, at least that I recall. I believe there was one that was mentioned sort of for an NPC, and that was for your evil champion, and that was a tyrant. That was the lawful evil champion of a evil, lawful evil. This is the Tyrant. Okay, so for our Paladin here, though, that I've been painting, I've done sort of a dark green for the main body armor. I want this to be I'm thinking of like Paladin of like the Shire from Lord of the Rings. Those kinds of colors. So I'm going to go for a lighter green. I've got my light green out here. Don't think I want to mix it with anything. I think those two greens contrast each other really well. So, but I think I'm going to do this up on maybe the arms, and then I'll do the legs sort of a dirtier green, a brownish green, more earth color. Make her look very much like she's growing out. So dirt, healthy plant, younger plant growing up shoots. I don't know. Thinking as I go. But that's kind of what I'm going for here. The vibe. Can't see her hands very well. So, maybe right there. Curious, 1 D&D is the player's handbook for that, and it's just come out. You guys can put in the comments what you think of it. I have not had a chance to look into it much. I've seen some reviews from some other people online, but it's not something I have looked at. I did follow changes to the open game license last year when that debacle, for lack of a better term, all came out. But I have not been following anything with 1 D&D that's been coming out recently. So if anyone of you have taken a look at that, let me know what you think, and I will, when I have time, maybe take a look. And I'm in a campaign right now, but I am not the DM, so my character is sort of stuck in the rule set we're using for that game, in just the standard 5th edition rules. In that game, I am playing as a kobold sorcerer in a world that doesn't really have kobolds, apparently. And we're playing in the Ravnica setting, the Magic the Gathering world setting. It's been fun. Given all of our schedules, are only able to get together about once a month to play. So we've had 5 or 6 sessions, something like that. But yeah, my character is a kobold named Kibki, who was a circus, I don't want to say performer, because his backstory is that he was not a performer per se, he was an attraction. And he eventually escaped and he thinks he's a dragon, is how I'm playing him. He believes that he is a baby dragon. And sort of flavor-wise for that character, he's got little stubs on his back where wings are going to grow when he gains his ability later on to grow wings as a draconic sorcerer. But yeah, I don't have a good kobold mini, or I would have painted him at some point. Maybe I'll get one of these days. But, Maisie's coming along alright. Got the dark green of the sort of chest piece, tabard. Arms are sort of this light green. I'm thinking of doing the helmet. I'm going to mix a little of this metallic green color that I have in with some of the light green and kind of do that for the helmet, give it a metallic look. And then I'll do, I'm not sure if I'm going to do yellow on the wings here, probably yellow. Give her a paladin, holy, angelic wings kind of look on her head. And then I have not looked at this brown. I don't think this is one I've ever used. I have just an acrylic art pack that I got at one point with, I don't know, 80, I think, colors. Maybe not that many. No, looks like about 80. Maybe I'll try this, and we might have to mix in a different brown. This is a metallic, so for the boots, might not do this. I might just go for a different, just a plain old, sort of a burnt sienna color. Maybe mix in a little something in there, I'm not sure what. But let's go ahead and try. We'll take this metallic green, which I am fairly certain I have not used before. Yep, it's a brand new one. So we'll pull that out. And mix in a little apple green. Let's put a drop of that over here, mix them, and see what if it's something we like or if we're going to change it up. Use some of these bigger brushes here to mix, just but I don't want to pick up all of it, so we'll go with this brush here. And as you can see, I am very professional. I know exactly what I'm doing. Actually, I have no idea. This is, like I said, this is all just a hobby I've picked up recently, and I thought you guys might want to join me on the way and, you know, join me along my adventure of becoming a hobbyist painter. So let's kind of take a look here, see what we're going to do. I've got too much on this brush now, I feel like. More of that color in here, that metallic green. Yeah, we'll try that out. Maybe at some point this little bump here, put in make it sort of a gem, maybe a blue color or something at some point. But the helmet will keep this green. As I'm painting right now, I've been thinking about how in the world am I going to edit this video, because I don't want the video to be more than like 10 minutes long. But it takes me a good 2 hours to paint a mini. If I did, I figure at some point as I get better, it might take longer because I'll let coats dry more and be better at it, but I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do some of this. Oh, got too much paint on my brush. Clean that off. I'm actually going to go back to the smaller brush that I was using before. Maybe there's one between those two sides that I got. Yeah, this guy. am not sure if I like that, but great thing about this is that we can always let it dry and paint over it. Okay. Now I've done something that I typically don't like to do, but I always end up doing it because bad habits. I like to start as far in as I can, which is why I did the sort of chest armor in here first, and then work my way up to the arms, and then I skipped like face and hair and went straight to the helmet. So I'm going to do the face, and I have a sort of a color here that they call flesh tint, which is sort of a fleshy tint for a very generic peach pale person. So I like to kind of add in varying amounts of brown to change the color there. So I'm going to grab my brown and put a drop of that here. Don't like to put too much because it seems that a little bit goes a long way. And let's see how those two mix together here. And if I was thinking I would have brought some toothpicks down to mix. I used to paint upstairs in my kitchen, but to make more of a permanent spot, I've started to set up this down here in my basement and did not remember to bring down any toothpicks. So we will see how this goes. And this is, I think, a decent tanned person color. I don't know if you can see on this one, I had a little bit of trouble figuring out how to make a nice dwarven, dark-skinned under person, darker skin there. I don't know. It's something I'm gonna have to figure out. But you know, we're learning as we go. This brush is really thick for this. And you can see my hands are not the most steady in the world. But hopefully we'll get what, you know, anyone ever watched or knows about who Bob Ross was. I think he's passed away, but I'm not sure now that I state it. I'm not confident in what I just said. But one thing Bob Ross would say on his show is we end up with happy accidents. That is what I'm hoping for. Happy accidents. I am not upset with that. Get some of that paint off that brush. I'm going to go to my thinnest one right here. Grab a little bit of that paint color. And let's see if we can get any on the hands. So that I know that these are where the hands are. Because when I get to painting that sword, I am pretty certain that it's going to get painted over. But not too shabby, not bad. Now, I want to go for blondish hair on her. But I do not know what yellow that I have would work as a blonde hair color. Cadmium yellow. That might do. we'll try it. We'll see what happens there. We'll see how it turns out and go from there. I'm painting really these small figures, so when I pull out paint, I only need a tiny drop, and I almost always need just the smallest of paintbrush, unless I'm doing something big like that dice tower, and then I do use a bigger brush. But for this kind of stuff, this teeny tiny brush. Oh, if I'm doing this, her hair kind of yellow, just looking at this, these wings are definitely going to be white. Maybe a white color. When I get to that, I have to think about what kind of white I want to do. Do I want it to be a pearlescent white? I have in my metallic colors a sort of a pearly white. Gives it a little bit of shimmer. Or I can do just a plain white. Given this is a holy warrior paladin, that's what we got ourselves painting here. I am going to go for the pearlescent, kind of sparkly white. And we will either have to paint over some of that, put a little bit more green in there, or her hair is just on her shoulders. A little thick right there to kind of... There we go. Now, faces I have a really difficult time with deciding, do I put a drop of paint in the eye? Do I do a little bit on the lips or anything like that? If I decide to do that, it's definitely not going to happen now because paint is still wet. But I might get a tiny bit, maybe some blue, put a tiny blue dot inside those eyes, and then maybe dry brush some red on the lips for kind of a pinkish, reddish lips color. But I do not know. Have not decided that. What's really nice is I'm going to probably paint the cape one of the very last things I paint, probably just before I do the ground, because this cape here, it makes it nice and easy to hold. I can either move it around a little bit and see, and I'm liking the way this is turning out so far. So far, so good. My least favorite thing is the helmet. I think I might just need to put a little bit more of another layer on there, which will wait for a minute. Now, if I'm going for sort of an earthy tone here on the boots, maybe I'm going to go brown boots and a different type of green for the pants. This matcha green, maybe. Is that what I used? I think that might be what I used for the arms. So if I do that, I'm going to mix these two together. That's what we're going to do. And use. Just want to see what brush will fit in here real well. Yeah, this one's got a little bit. I think this is going to be the one I want to use. So we're just going to take a little of this sap green, a little bit of this matcha green. Pull those two together in here. And mix till I find a shade that I like. And then since it's all over my brush and it's way too much, since I don't have my toothpick to mix, come back in here, clean it off. Got water back there, I'm going to clean that off here, and then now I can just get the tip wet. Tip. Still a little bit wet. Don't mind a little bit of water on the brush, but don't want too much. let's see. Yeah. One thing that I've noticed with these pieces that I've been painting, I use a white, let me show you what some of these other pieces look like. The next guy or gal that I'm going to paint is going to be this one here. These ones I've primed both of them, but an unprimed piece, these ones came, and when they're not primed, they're more of this gray color. This one is a mushroom druid dwarf character that I'll get to at some point from this same set of minis. But you can see it's more of a brown, color, or not brown, gray, versus this white, lighter color that I found. That's the prime I use. When I run out of this white primer, I'm going to get a black primer. Because what I've noticed is that if I miss a spot, the white really stands out. And what I'd prefer is that if there's a little black spot that's standing out, it might look more like a shadow. If I miss down in some crevice somewhere, like there's the pant leg, and you can see the part of the tabard hanging down here. I don't know how much that comes through, but if I missed this little spot, it would look more like it was just shadow, some shading, rather than I missed a spot, which the white really shows up at. And I know that at some point I'm going to learn I'm going to get some get some washes and learn how to use those, and that those will help. But as of yet, I don't know how to do a wash. I've never painted with one. Get some of this in here. Now I'm going to let that dry a little bit before I go in and paint the boots a brown color. Because I don't want to, let anything I've like some spots that I've hit with the down here, see where the green's gone onto the boots and stuff. I want it to dry, so when I paint with the brown, it covers it. It covers it up. She looks very green. Very, very green. So what I'm going to do, I want to change it up a little bit. Have a little contrast on there. That's why we're going to do the cape when I get to that. Again, that's going to be one of the last things, so I can hold it without smearing stuff all over. I'm going to do that a different color. I'm thinking probably a blue. Sort of either a sky blue or a nice deep blue, or maybe sky blue underneath and a deeper blue up top. Just so that there's a little bit of contrast between all these greens and earthy colors. Now, thinking of letting some of this dry for a bit while I work on the sword. The sword I'm going to have as this burnt sienna sort of brownish color. Or do I want that to be the boots? I'm trying to decide which one's which. I don't think it really makes a difference. So I'm going to do this burnt sienna. You know what? I'm going to do, those are going to be my boots color. Kind of looking at here and just imagining which one's going to be darker. I think the boots need to be that darker brown color. So we're going to just do this brown. And maybe just a titch. Just a teensy bit. That will be my boots. But for now, I'm just going to pick up a little of that and mix it in here just so this is not quite so plain brown. A little bit too much on my brush there. Yeah, I think that's the color I like. For the handle, the wooden handle on this sword, Now the look of this sword is very different from the rest. Now underneath, I feel like I'm holding it upside down a lot, painting the underside, but I just don't want someone to, I mean, you're mostly going to see the piece from about this angle, which is why I don't like necessarily that color on the helmet. But I don't want to ignore the undersides of anything. Oh, going back to that Maisie from Baldur's Gate 2, she gave me the vibe, and from what I remember of her story, she sort of had a always wanted to prove herself to the other paladins that she was as good as them. So this character, this mini, really made me think of her, because it's also sort of like a larger size. Smaller character, a halfling, takes a bigger, has a larger base. So, with a large sword, I see this character, this Maisie character I'm doing, as very much as a big, a lot of strength, big punch in a small package kind of thing. But look at this sword, some of this energy coming up off the top of it, almost like it's on fire. Down here, this ball with these spikes, it almost looks like she's got herself a sword she's taken off of an enemy she's killed. So I might contrast the sword with her so it looks different. Maybe some black and red. Some black and red on here. So if I pull out, so with this sword, it might just be because of the way these spikes are showing up, but it looks like very much like a sword that she didn't train with. It's too big for her. The handle is too big for her hands. She's a tough one. She can handle it. So we're going to have this be a sword that she has taken from one of her fallen enemies. And while it might be a sword that someone evil once used, she is going to use it for good. Oh, looks like I haven't ever used this vermilion color, so we're going to pull out this out here, and kind of a bright, almost like a blood red, this vermilion one right here, but we'll see how this goes. Drop of that. All right. Yeah. I'm thinking in the handle here, this circle part will do like a red gem. Black spikes coming up off of it. And then maybe some red energy coming off of the metallic sword. But we will adjust the energy coming off of there because it is her holy paladin energy. Let's take a look. Okay. never know if I'm getting too much paint on my brush or not enough. If anyone watches this that it actually knows something about painting that isn't someone a little more professional than me, let me know. Because that is the whole point of what I'm doing. I want to learn and become a better painter. And the only way to do that is to mess up a lot. Okay, kind of like that. Part of me wants to make this look like it's an eye. Line down here, like it's a... Maybe this is a cursed sword that she's picked up and she has not yet learned that it's cursed. Maybe this is the eye that some demon uses to watch the world. Keep an eye, keep an eye on her. It's champions. Alright. This one looks better than this side, I think. That side's a little bit too runny. There we go. That's a little better. Some of this down here, kind of fill in some of these gaps. Now, when I do the metal on the blades, I don't have a good metallic gray color. I have this metallic silver, I have white, I have black, I have that metallic white, it's sort of a pearly white, but I don't have a ton of the metallics. So, but what I'm going to do, because this looks too silvery to me, it doesn't look gray enough to be metal, but I like the metallic look of it, so we're going to put a drop of that and a teensy bit of this sort of metallic pearl white. This metallic white in here. And we're going to mix those two together. Mix those together to get a better gray. So it doesn't look like it's a silver coin, it looks like it's a sword. Hopefully that works. And then I can try brush some red, maybe on the underside, like it's hit something, but I do want these flashes of energy coming up. To have a little bit of that, a little bit of color on them, but right now we're just going to kind of do this whole sword and those energy flames. All that's going to be this color. Oop. Touched that black. We want to move too much there. In the final version of this video, there will definitely be a lot of cutting and a lot of, if I can figure out how, speeding up the video. Because these parts where I'm not really talking, all I'm doing is painting, I'm sure you don't need to listen to. and watch at regular speed. Okay. I think I like that. Okay. I'll let that dry a little bit. So our paladin here has found an evil demonic sword great sword that she is wielding now. That's why she's so angry. Let's go ahead and get her boots painted. I wonder, I've never noticed how if my head pops into the shot a little bit, because I get down and try and get close so I can see what I'm doing. Oh, I think I grabbed the wrong brown for a minute. Ha ha ha. Yes, I did. See, that looks exactly like the handle of the sword. Okay. Feel like she's coming along. Give my hand a second to relax. Now I get a little change here. I have decided to change the color of her hat. I'm going to go for, well, I gave her blonde hair, so I don't want to give her sort of a bright yellow hat. We'll just change up this metallic with this green here. Try and give this green a little bit of a metallic sheen to it. And this can look like a leafy green color for her helmet, rather than that too light, too much of that apple. Just change it up a little bit here. Ha! Painting one time I dropped a figure into my paints, and that was a pain in the behind to get corrected. I prefer this. This looks way better. Whoop. Okay. Okay, I like that. I like that. What I'm going to do is the pearly white on those wings on the helmet, and then maybe I'll dry brush a little yellow on later. That will put a little bit of a holy light kind of look to it, I think. Oh, well, just right here I can see a spot where I missed. We have to add a little more flesh color paint to her cheek there. This doesn't really change a whole lot from the color of the primer that I use. I want to cover up a little bit of some of these, some of this green that might have got on here a little bit, like back in here. Yeah, I like that. And while you're thinking of it, I'm going to grab a little bit of the flesh color again to cover up this little tiny spot I missed. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, I want to give the blade a little more time to dry before I go ahead and try and put anything on these spikes or the flaming energy, holy flaming energy is going to be. So we're going to go ahead and do the cape. I am thinking of doing a sort of a light blue underneath and then a darker blue up top. So I've got these two options. I'm going to go for the sky blue underneath for sure, I think. And then I'm not going to go for the teal. I think I'm going to go for the cerulean blue. Sky, more of a darker sky blue up on top of the cape. So it feels like I have not opened this one yet. Getting into a lot of these colors I haven't used before. Get some of that. Yeah, I like that as the top sky blue. Almost like the paint or the dye. They used a little bit more of it on the one side of the cape. I don't know if that makes sense for doing fabrics. You know, you get fabrics that are a little bit lighter on the underside. If I can pick you up, there we go. I don't have the best control over my fingers, but that is okay. Now, we don't have a lot of detail work that we need to be doing, so I can use one of these wider brushes. I always like to have my brush a little bit wet. Feels like it works just a little bit better. Thinking about it, maybe I want to just put a little bit, do the same color on both sides and then dry brush a little of the other blue on it. Let me do this top side and see how that looks. And then I really like dry brushing. I think it gives a really cool accent to what you're working on. So if I can find an excuse to do it, I like to do it. can really help you bring out some of the texture in what you're working, what you're painting. Those figures from that game Unfathomable that I painted have the water, those big guys that are coming up out of the water. I dry brushed the sort of white color on the waves to give it a good kind of ocean spray in the waves look, and I think that came out really well. So I'm thinking I'm going to do something like that here. I'll just use that lighter one to show like that's where maybe the cape has been more worn, and to show some of the texture on this, because it is pretty wavy. The cape here's there we go. I actually like how it's coming out on the bottom of the cape here a little bit better, so I'm going to get a little bit more paint and do a little bit thicker layer up top, because I get some of these spots where it looks like kind of like that, where you see it looks like they pulled off the paint. Here we go. Whoop, see that, I don't quite know what to do about that. So again, those of you who painted longer than me, let me know what I'm doing here. All right. Kind of where we're at right now. I feel like I need a different colored tablecloth here. All right. Do a little touch here. Okay, good. It does feel like it is dry enough for me to do a little bit of the what I was going to do here. Put some yellow energy up on this, and then first I'm going to paint the ground. When I paint the ground, it'll show, I can put the energy like it's coming off of the broken pieces as well. So I want to do that ground. For that, I usually take these the two grays I use. I use one of the grays, I think, and sort of this bluish gray. I usually mix those and get sort of brick ground color that I want. Although this looks kind of cobblestone-y. If I had a wash, I'd put it in those cracks after, but I don't. So gray mixed with blue-gray gets me this color that I really like for the base of my minis that I've been painting recently. Yeah, that looked like a sort of a slate brick. Now I try and fail every time to just put it on the top. I kind of want to leave the sides white, but it never happens. As you can see on this one, I tried it, and of course it went down. Let's see if we can do that on this one here. Don't want to touch the cape. See, yep, I went down here already, so now I'm going to fill it in. Alright. And it's gone into the cracks, but not staying up on top of the bricks like I want it to. Okay, now to get into these spots here, I'm going to need a much thinner brush. So I'm just going to finish kind of getting the larger areas with this brush. Clean it off. And then get my itty bitty brush here. Now, I need to let that just sort of dry for a second. Now, when I'm dry brushing, so I'm going to wait to dry brush way down here. But what I want to do is take my big thick brush here. I'm going to put some yellow. Put some yellow on the tip of it. I don't want it very high up on my brush. Don't think. This yellow might be a little vibrant. Is that what I'm thinking? Do I want to add? You know what? I think I'll go with it, and then I can always layer something else on top if I want to adjust anything. But what I've learned about dry brushing is you want to get, a good amount on there, so I've got a good amount of paint, but you want it to be dry as it, so you get something like a paper towel or a piece of cardboard and just wipe off the moisture from it, but you keep the paint on the brush. Hopefully I've done that. And then you can just kind of, over across the top of it, and you can see how it's doing that there. Across it here. Putting a little bit on the broken brick. And I know that broken brick is a little wet. You can actually see it getting on my brush here. Grab a little bit more of it. But I don't mind that it looks a little bit different. Because when I've done this in the past, I've liked the results. And the thing about dry brushing I've found is that you can dry brush over where you've had mistakes in the past, and it seems to come out okay. Now, if I look at this is kind of coming out how I like it. I need to get more paint in here. What I'm going to do is get a teeny tiny amount of this red. Maybe add a little bit of this yellow in there. Not to make an orange. I don't want to combine them or mix them. I just want them both on my brush at the same time. Again, get some of that moisture out of there. And then add a tiny bit of red into what I've done yellow to show that the unholy energy, probably should have done the red on bottom and the yellow on top, but it's okay. I kind of like it. It looks almost like fire a little bit. But, show that some of the holy energy from our paladin is mixing with the unholy energy from our sword here. Clean that off. Ooh, still red in there. One thing I want to do to try finish up some of the brick where you can see the brush strokes. Do a little bit more of the gray, but I'm going to take some of this leftover black. Mix it in here with this gray. And not so much dry brush it in, but see if I can get it as an accent. Yeah, it looks alright. Now I'm just going to kind of hold it so I can, whoop, I felt like I touched her, cut her shoe a little, that is okay. Just kind of do this to show the bricks a slightly different color than the rest of the ground. So I'm not going to push it down in as much. Yeah, just kind of on top there so you can still see the cracks. A little bit more black there than I needed. That is okay. And I think we're just about done. I want to do that sky blue accent on the cape here. This brush is the one I use a lot for my sort of dry brushing. It's thicker and shorter, but I might go with this one just because it's a little wider. It's a wide cape there, so I can kind of do it a little quicker. But again, get a bunch of that paint on here. Add in a little of that blue. I kind of like that mix there. And then take off some excess moisture, not paint. Oop, maybe getting a little bit too much paint off. I just want to get the moisture out of here, so that as I come in, you can see it on top where the cape comes up, where the cape's a little higher. And then in the cracks you get that darker color. Really seeing some of those crevices, and down here I'll do a little bit as well just to fill in any of the spots I may have missed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry, and then set it aside to so I'm going to set it aside and let it dry. When it's done drying, I'm going to take that one and this one that I painted the other day. I'll go out and I will spray them with my finish, and we'll be done. We'll see how it all turned out. Thanks, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, all those things.